The Western Bulldogs get their man. Connor Budarick has been traded from the Gold Coast Suns. He's landed at the Whitten Oval. And is this one of the keys that's going to unlock the desire for them to finally get back into that top 8? For the Suns, losing some depth here yet again with this trade, is that going to come back to bite them? And then from an AFL Fantasy and a SuperCoach perspective, which, let's be honest, that's the reason you're checking in on the coaches panel. Yeah, you're keen on what it means for the teams, but really locking in on what the fantasy implications are for 2026. We'll unpack that about Connor and the surrounding moves right throughout this episode. We've been doing this for every single player that's moved clubs during the trade and free agency period. Maybe you've just stumbled upon us, proper grammar, that's my specialty. Maybe you've just started to think back about fantasy footy, whatever it is, every single player that's moved clubs this free agency and trade period, right here on the channel, we got you covered with a review on them. He's a pretty handy and versatile player, Connor, I'm not going to lie, and probably is the sort of player that Damien Hardwick just loves to mould. He's got great versatility about him, and it's probably what's kept him on that list for the Suns for such a long period of time. He's been and has been able to play in any of the three segments of the ground. I wouldn't say with huge success, but certainly to a strong AFL standard. There's been moments where he's been deployed as that kind of lockdown small defender, stopping the most damaging oppo craft forward. There's been other times he's been utilised as the playmaker and the rebounder off halfback. Even moments floating up around through the midfield. And then most recently, given opportunities to create some of that work rate and pressure that he's so strong at, bringing that inside the Suns forward 50 and then either himself or setting up teammates to create a scoreboard impact. I think we've got to acknowledge that as strong as the Suns are going to get once Christian Petrarca officially lands at the club, they've weakened parts of their list. Now, we'll talk about how that's going to get resolved in a moment. But they've weakened parts of their list. Flanders and Ainsworth are clear best 22 in my eyes. Flanders, I think we'll see at St Kilda just how special a player he could be. And Ainsworth is a great work rate forward. Connor's kind of flown under the radar a little bit, and it's probably because he is inside that sort of 15 to 23 picked on match day when he does get selected. And so it doesn't get the applause or the notice from outside of the footy club, but internally, deeply loved, highly respected. He's exactly the type of player that you want to play with and against because they are all effort, all intensity, and you can never question them for that. And what he can do is mid-game, if something needs to change, he's got enough flexibility about him. It's like, hey, mate, we need you to go. We're getting really exposed on that opposition small defender. Can you go down and lock that in? He can play that versatility. You need an additional rebound and maybe your core playmakers being shut down. He's no Bailey Dale, who we'll talk about in this video as well, but he's a solid to good user of the ball. He can go for it. He's this nice versatility piece that on your list, let alone on match day, is really, really handy. So the Suns are losing some depth here and continuing, while he's not only an exclusive small forward, really his versatility is the key to his success and why he's been so highly valued here by the Dogs and previously by the Suns. Is it's just another small forward type that they've got to look to replace that. I still don't feel like they've got a great option. Flanders isn't a small, but was playing a lot of forward last year. Ainsworth is that forward that they've got to replace. And Budarick has played that in spurts over his career, let alone letting a Tom Berry go. So I still feel like the gap for the Suns, while Budarick is replaceable in some players that we'll talk about in a moment, I still feel like they have not addressed the biggest elephant in the room. Don't forget they let Malcolm Moses go to the Swans as well. They still, in my eyes, have a glaring gap in their list, and that is a high caliber small forward. They don't have to be elite, but they do need to be high caliber. And I look at the list, and the only way they're going to be able to get that is kind of in the aggregate of some of their smaller style midfielders that are either developing in a Rogers or a Lombard or protecting it with some resting mids that have some forward crafts, such as a Christian Petrarca. It still feels like, to me, there's a bit of a list gap here for them. And as much as losing all these players, including Budarick, is going to hurt some depth, They've got arguably the best kid in the draft in Zeke Euland coming in. They've got a bunch of other academy kids. I don't see them getting them all, but they've just got a bunch of others floating in on this upcoming draft again. They'll be fine to figure it out. But still, that's the gap that at time of this episode dropping, they have not yet landed that, and still probably the only weakness and really Achilles heel of the Gold Coast Suns is something on the strong to elite side of small forwards. What does this mean for the Bulldogs? Well, I think the question you got to ask is, what's the role that he's going to play? Because as I mentioned, he's played that small forward role. He's played that small defender role. He's played a little bit link up and a little bit of a playmaker sort of role. It really is a lovely versatile piece to add on to your AFL list. But where does he sit inside this Bulldogs best lineup? From my perspective, I think there's more of a need for him inside defensive 50 than there is inside the offensive 50. They've had Taylor Duray depart the club, whoever a decent stretch of games and seasons now has been one of the more reliable lockdown defenders that can create and play make. Not at the level that we've seen a Johannesson at his peak, a Caleb Daniel at his peak, and right now a Bailey Dale at his peak, but is more than serviceable to create rebound and offensive moments to set up play for his team. And that's a really obvious spot and where I think Connor is going to slide straight in. Lock down the opposition's most damaging small forward. When you get the opportunity to create a forward motion for us, absolutely do that. But I've got Connor sitting in that spot. Yes, he could go forward, but when I look at the smalls that they've got, Riley West has really developed into an pest is probably the best way that I could phrase it. An absolute pest in all the best kinds of way. I mean that pest. And then a Cody Waitman who didn't play much, in fact, at all last year. Well, got some aerial power. It's his small forward craft that has really made him elite. I don't see the need for another version of that. Again, mid-game, you need more of a defensive-minded forward. Okay, that's an in-game audible that you can call, but I think he's going to come straight in and take that vacant spot of a Taylor Duray. From a fantasy implication, when you look at the average of 40s across the formats, there's just not much relevance there. But over the last previous history, again, he's had multiple roles. He's shown he can get the 60s. So if he's back in that defensive spot, I can see a mid to high 60s average sitting inside the world of scoring, which is, again, hits that pass mark we need when we're going into these value options. We do need a minimum of 20 points per game. But politely, is that enough to get a high 60s? Aren't you hoping a rookie priced player could do that for you? He's not that far away from a rookie in some formats, I understand. But personally, I'd probably need to see something pretty drastic in the preseason about a little bit more divergence about not just playing through Bailey Dale exclusively. Then I'd be a little more intrigued. But right now, I don't think it has any direct fantasy implications, not only for Bailey Dale, not only for the player that takes his spot at the Suns, but even for Connor himself. I just don't see it. He needs to be close to that 30 points per game of value, given the price point we're paying at. He's not someone that I'd be interested in. Something has to change in the Bulldogs' game style and playing makeup for me to actually consider it. But right now, yeah, he's not on my list. But do you agree or disagree? If you're watching this on YouTube and you think Connor's going to play a different role in the team, why don't you comment below and let me know, where do you see him sitting inside this Dogs outfit? If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet and liked this video, make sure you do. It's 2 simple things that you can do that make a huge impact for us here at the Coaches Panel. We're dropping these episodes also as audio podcasts. So if you're driving, you're out and about, you can still go and check these out. Wherever you get your audio podcasts, we are there. Subscribe, because we are dropping content all the time this off season. And in fact, our Patreons are getting to experience that more than anybody else. They're getting a special exclusive series for our paid up subscribers where they're getting access to our keeper ranks, the top 50 players at the end of the 2025 season, that if you play in a keeper or dynasty draft league, fellow panelists Kane and myself are ranking those players into 8 different groupings, 8 different tiers. And we just dropped tier 6 just the other day. So make sure you go and check that out. Thanks so much for tuning in. We hope you've enjoyed this episode on the channel. Every single player that's moved clubs, we've reviewed them. So go back in, check out another episode. We'd love to get your thoughts on the next player that's moved clubs this trade and free agency period.